He's top tier, you're top tier? Are there any other top tiers I need to know about?
Just pass out?
I'm done. Hello everybody, my name is Christian, and today we're going to be talking about a little bit of a thing that I have noticed in the Star Rail community as of late, primarily on Twitter, but I'm pretty sure it's in other places as well. There has been an ongoing discussion about the sheer amount of characters in Predwin's T0. There are currently 8 characters who reside in T0 DPS, and there are 3 more characters who reside in T0.5 DPS. This is probably the highest amount of characters who have ever been in these categories all at once in the entire duration that Star Rail has existed. I do not believe there has ever been more characters in either one of these slots than there are right now, and that is a wild thing to say when we are in version 4.x, and this is when we have the highest amount of good characters. I'm saying that, but people have been saying there must be something wrong with the ratings, there aren't actually this many good characters, all that stuff. So today, I'm going to be talking about all of these characters, what I think their relative value is, and if I truly think that this is accurate, that this is the best age for Star Rail DPS that has existed. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, become a YouTube member down below, and with that said, let's get into it. There are a lot of good characters in Star Rail right now, apparently. We have Ashvail, Archer, Castis, Firefly, Hecelins, Evernight, Silverwolf level 999, and Sparksy, all sitting in T0. Immediately behind them is Mighty, Anexa, and Finon, all in T0.5. This is just for DPS too, by the way. We have Black Swan, Kafka, Evernight, Sparksy in support DPS. We have Dahlia, Sparkle, Yao Guang, Cyrene for amplifier, and sustains. We've had the same sustains there for a little while at this point, but you know. Donhung PT and Hyson are very good after all. This is one of the most interesting periods in Star Rail history, I feel like. We see a lot of top tiers in basically every single category, and we've seen a lot of team diversity. A lot of teams have started getting better support, or you can actually invest in your teams more. I feel like the Star Rail community has started to understand that at least a little bit better, that investing can actually be extremely helpful. We've also seen that because of a lot of the free characters we've gotten, like a free Sparkle, a free Archer, free Donhung PT, a lot of teams have managed to become even more competitive because players have been able to pull more, or just because of random Nova Flare buffs, like for Black Swan and Sparkle. Overall, the state of Star Rail has been very interesting to witness so far. That is to say, there is not faults as well with what's been going on recently. Like Mecha Pom Pom, when the only Elation characters in the game were Yao Guang and Sparksy back to back, and then you had Ashvail who released the same update as Mecha Pom Pom, and it felt like he wasn't even that shilled for Mecha Pom Pom. Like, it was kinda a decent fight for him, but not amazing. Now we have whatever it is, the Full Wish boss or whatever her name is. She's just been a massive pain in the ass, and once again, very much directed towards Silverwolf level 999 in mind, because for those of you who do not know, I can pull it up on the Herda site right now. I believe the lowest cost clear of Plight version of this AA boss is 8 cost Silverwolf level 999. I'm pretty sure the first team that is not Silverwolf's team to clear is 15 cost or something like that. I believe that's what I saw the other day on Twitter. That is unbelievable. So, saying all of that, yeah, the game's not in a perfect state right now, but it is in one of the more interesting states it's been in, just in terms of character competitiveness. And that is really nice to see. That takes us back to the initial question at the start of this video. People have been saying, are there really this many top tiers in Star Rail right now? Because the fact that there are so many, people don't really tend to believe that because of the way the game is, because of the way the general community base is, where it's a lot of complaints about power creep, we don't really invest in teams much, all that good stuff. So it's hard to say, is this really the case where there are this many powerful characters and this many powerful teams? What I want to do is, I'm going to go through slowly and talk about each one of these characters, their current state in the meta, and if I think they are actually deserving of this top tier label, and how long I think it's going to hold up. Because we all know, At some point or another, every single character you see on the screen right now, they are all going to drop in tier eventually. Alright, that was very long-winded. Let's go with who already dropped initially and then managed to claw his way back up. Let's talk about Archer for a bit. Archer is interesting. He is a character who has not really changed upon his initial reveal. He had a very interesting kit that relied on one thing and one thing only, skill points. The more skill points you had, you were going to succeed more with him because you could just do more overall damage. He was always going to be limited by just, of course, multipliers, but then by the amount of skill points your team could output. This is why, if you didn't have Sparkle, a lot of people really said that Archer wasn't as worth using, because you kind of lose out on quite a bit of the value there by not having all of those extra skill points available. Archer did drop off at some point. He was starting to struggle in MOC a little, at least compared to, you know, Mono Rem, DOT, which got a lot of shill for it specifically, and then Finon, of course, was always super powerful. Anexa with his, like, unbelievable kit that was basically built to break any encounter in the game. Compared to them, Archer was in fact starting to struggle a little bit. So he dropped down to 0.5, he was kind of just chilling down there for a fair bit, and then we got hit with one of the most unexpected Nova Flares in human history, which was for Sparkle. These buffs for Sparkle elevated her into one of the best amplifiers in the game, probably the best action advancer. Sunday still has his niches, and the damage boost that she would now bestow on Archer, all of the specific parts of her kit that basically got improved to work with him, just catapulted him straight back into T0, into being that elite level character that he was when he initially came out with Sparkle. I do still think that Archer is honestly a fairly good character. I think he's still pretty strong. He still has decent matchups purely because he is a very good brute force character. If you have a Silverwolf on your account, then you can run that with Sparkle and he will be able to do a lot of damage no matter what. He also benefits pretty well from a sustainless playstyle if you can manage it, because oh my god, those shots start doing insane damage. He is in a relatively fine spot. He is still competing at a very, very high level, and thanks to those Sparkle buffs, he will still be there for at least a little bit. That's the overall kind of take on Archer. I do think he's good enough to be in top tier. I think now is probably a good time to talk about what I believe constitutes a top tier in this game. If you are able to clear in basically like 2 cycles, I still feel like you are definitely a top tier. If you are able to 3-star Knights fairly easily with your team, then you are probably a top tier. And then if you can do King stages, you're a top tier, but again, we're going to try and discard that for now. With all that criteria in mind, I do feel like Archer still fits the bill for a top tier. I do, however, think he probably lands a bit lower on the scale comparatively. His overall damage is fantastic, and if you are willing to invest in that team, of course you're going to keep being able to do well. Investment is the key to doing well at anything in this game. But compared to some of the other characters, like, of course, just Mono Rem, which is good in every single scenario, basically, a character like Ashvail, who is probably going to only get better over time. He's going to keep getting teammates, he's going to keep getting supports, he's going to continuously keep improving. And then, of course, Mono Elation, which is the flagship team for this update, so you would be hard-pressed to beat that. And lastly, a character like Firefly, who is just all about break, and she has a game-breaking mechanic, which can just invalidate toughness bars or lock toughness bars with Dahlia. Compared to all of that, I do think Archer is a little bit behind everybody else. Not by a lot, but a little bit. In terms of where I would currently put Archer, I think he would be fine to be in T0, but I think going down to T0.5 would be fairly valid. I do think moving him would be acceptable because I feel like just compared to everybody else, he is a little underpowered. Which is crazy to say about a guy who managed to clear a king stage with, like, what, 2 cost? Oh, this game's wild that that's the case. Alright, next up, we are going to talk about Ashvail. Ashvail is the newest non-elation character to be added into the game. He came out in version 4.1, and he is interesting. I've said it before, I've made a whole video on it. I do not think Ashvail is meant to be a main DPS. He's SP friendly, he gives massive buffs, and his actual multipliers are a little bit lower than I feel like they should be. Ashvail is very, very strong. However, his ranking still feels a little deceptive purely because I don't think that this is the role he's meant to be in. With that in mind, he is still unbelievably powerful. He managed to clear the king stage when he came out. He managed to do really well against a lot of the bosses. He is very, very strong in pure fiction. He can do well in apocalyptic shadow. Honestly, one of his weaker spots was MOC because it really, really depends on the boss you're getting. I saw very, very mixed opinions on him versus Sparksicon. Oh man, it was all over the place. While not a perfect character, he is genuinely good enough, I think, to warrant being a top tier. He has a extremely high damaging ultimate, he has great kit utility, he can be buffed a substantial amount. One of the biggest flaws in his gameplay and what he can kind of struggle with as of right now is that he is not very good in sustainless because his base defense and HP, all of that, they suck. Oh my god, they suck. But in terms of just raw power output, he is definitely good enough to sit amongst the top tiers. I also think that when he gets a bit more to his team, whether it's a support to help him, whether it's a main DPS to be paired with, any of those things, I think that is when we will see more of his true value actually be unveiled. I feel like we're going to see him kind of explode a lot more, be one of the best support DPSs in the game because of his association with that team, or we're going to see him be even better as a main DPS because he finally has another support that he really loves running with that's going to help him a bunch to be the best character he can be. Because of all that, I do think he definitely deserves to be in T0 as of right now. Alright, the next character up is going to be Castis. Overall, Castis is a very good character, I like her a lot. Now when it comes to her gameplay, I've talked about this extensively. Castis is the weakest link in Mono Remembrance, and it is not close. Castis without Hyacin is basically a dying corpse. Evernight is so much better without Hyacin, it's not even funny. So, that's already one thing to keep in mind. But if you actually have Hyacin, you have that ideal team. Castis is the least essential member, and in her own teams where she does not have Evernight to back her up, she does not have Cyrene, she is good. However, that is not great, that is not amazing, she is just good. I truly believe that at this point, if you do not have Hyacin Eidolons, you do not have Castis Eidolons, you do not have Cyrene and Evernight to just form the complete team, if Castis is still the center of your team and is not heavily invested into at this point, she is not deserving of the top tier tag anymore. She is simply weaker than many of the other members. She really relies on them to do all of the damage that she does. She really likes having Evernight to charge her faster, give her massive damage boost with Evernight's ult and skill. She enjoys having the fast regeneration rate of Hyacin, and then if you have Hyacin E1, that gives her another massive, massive damage boost on top of what she already has. Cyrene is massive for Castis, giving that detonation a much, much better utility by actually having it be more powerful, allowing you to overcap and do way more single target damage, which is what she really, really struggles with. The character is very flawed, but a lot of those flaws are made up for with this specific team. So, that's where the kind of distinction has to come in. If you are running Castis in the ideal mono-rem team with Evernight, Cyrene, Hyacin, even if you want to sub in RMC over Cyrene, either way, some combination of that is still a top tier character, that is still very good, and it is because every other character in that team is top tier, and they enable Castis to do way, way more and actually come up to the level of a top tier. If you do not have all of those ideal pieces for Castis, plain and simple, she is not as good as Evernight, she's not as good as Firefly, she is not as good as anybody else in the same realm as her. That's the distinction I want to make. It is a very fair distinction, I feel like, because people still paint Castis as kind of the boogeyman of this game, like when it got really, really bad. She was a very, very big influence as to how we got into the direction that the game is currently going, but she is no longer anywhere near as bad as she once was for the game's balancing. It is the entire team that is the issue, and especially if we're just going off of one character who is the central driver to having that team be such a success, it's very easily Evernight. Evernight is the real powerhouse there. So, yeah, Monorem as a whole, definitely still top tier, great team, works in every scenario. Castis, without all those ideal pieces, she is going to lag behind a decent bit at this point in my opinion. And even if you still just have Hyacin, without that investment, she's definitely not as good as every other character in T0 right now. Alright, let's quickly move on to Evernight because I've already talked about her extensively. This is going to be a short section. Evernight is great as a sup DPS for Castis. She is great as a main DPS with Hyacin, Irene, RMC, and she actually has the ability to be played without all of those ideal teammates at least a little bit. She works far better than Castis does without Mono Remembrance. She is just a great overall character, awesome in Pure Fiction, awesome in MOC, awesome in Apocalyptic Shadow, although probably not quite as good in that mode if we're being honest. Overall amazing character, definitely deserving of the top tier label. I don't really feel like I have to explain that since I have in fact made a whole video about Evernight if you want to go check that out. Now, let's talk about Firefly. So we all know that Firefly was in the absolute dumps for quite a while. Break received no support for basically the entirety of Amphorius up until the end of it. They were really struggling to do anything substantial. This team was falling off. Boot Hill wasn't doing well either. Rappa wasn't doing well either. Break just sucked. Dahlia came out and just instantly revived the archetype back to absolute gods of the genre, basically. Boot Hill, invested Boot Hill teams can still slaughter almost anything in their path. Firefly teams, running the game right now. She is in top tier, and she is very deserving of it, especially after she just received a goddamn Nova Flare that made her E2, one of the most popular Eidolons in the game, even better. Made her base super break damage like 3 times as high, something like that, like the actual multiplier got multiplied by that much. And they made her easier to build by having her combustion not go off as fast. You can actually delay the timer. In terms of just raw output, a team of normal investment with Firefly is going to slaughter just about anything in the game at this point. The only thing that I would still say might be a struggle is Pure Fiction if you do not have E2. However, if you do have E2, you are going to decimate that mode. Also, she isn't even that bad at this point in Pure Fiction because they improved her skill to now implant weakness on all adjacent targets as well as your central target. So she's not even that bad in Pure Fiction anymore to begin with. But E2 just makes her even better in that freaking mode. Firefly is just in an amazing spot. She is incredibly powerful. She has received a lot of favorable matchups in the game as of late. She has managed to deal with Mecha Pom-Pom. She dealt with the Great Septimus King stage. She can deal with the E-Core Memo Sprite pretty damn easily. I would say out of the recent matchups we have seen, the only ones that haven't been super favorable for her are the new Full Wish boss. That has not been too great for her. Lygus isn't exactly ideal for her, I would say, because Lygus is just kind of a hard character to break and actually get any value out of. That dude just has so much HP, and you need to deal with his mobs first to really get that damage, like, ticking upward. But overall, a lot of the bosses have benefited her, especially Sparxicon, who just gets torn apart by Firefly compared to any of the other break characters, or even many of the other characters in the game right now. Firefly just absolutely decimates that fight. Yeah, I really think Firefly is in an amazing place right now. I don't even think the Nova Flare was justifiable, if we're being honest. She really did not need it. But now that she has it, it has definitely cemented her as probably... I don't know. I don't like to put an exact number on some of these opinions, but I would say broadly, unless I'm forgetting somebody, I think easily a top 5 DPS in the game, probably closer to top 3 at this point. And then in terms of investment's always going to be different, but with an invested Firefly team, I managed to clear this current King stage with 3 stars, and I didn't even have to do sustainless. So with that in mind, Yeah, that's crazy. Firefly definitely deserving of that top tier spot. Break is going to be an archetype that should always be in consideration for your account. I'm going to make a whole video about this at some point. But Break is an incredible archetype that is extremely powerful right now and will continue to receive support into the future, I believe. It is in fact worth it to invest in Break as it comes back if you want. It is going to help you on night stages always. There's always going to be one debuff that they can just completely ignore. There's always going to be some sort of MOC boss that can be invalidated by just breaking them. There's always going to be Apocalyptic Shadow, which centers a lot around managing to break your target. Overall, Break is a great archetype. Firefly is the best character in that archetype right now. This is definitely something that is of high value and is worth investing in into the future if you want to, and you want something that is going to be good and reliable on your account. All right, we're gonna get the real boring ones out of the way. Silverwolf, level 999, and Sparksy. They are part of Elian flagship. They are top tier characters. They've come out within the last, 3 updates. Yeah, we're not talking about this. And the last character we are going to touch on for right now is going to be Hecelins. This is finally where we get on our next little fraud watch. DOT is an incredible archetype, and I am so happy that it got revived. Hecelins has been a massive boost. Black Swan getting Nova Flared provided another substantial boost that is going to keep this team relevant and competitive for quite a while now. DOT is not quite as great as I feel like people make it out to be. In terms of a team type that is accessible, I think DOT is one of the more accessible team types in the game. They have great replacement light cones, with Kafka not even needing her signature, and Black Swan and Hecelins both being able to use Eyes of the Prey and get a lot of value out of that. So they are a relatively cheap team type, and their investment levels are unbelievably powerful. Black Swan E1, Hecelins E1, absolutely insane Eidolons that will boost your performance basically tenfold. It is an unbelievable power boost and is extremely nice to get, and basically essential to get if you want to keep using these teams. I bring that up because that's kind of what I'm getting at, is I don't think DOT is performing quite as well without those Eidolons anymore. Without investment of some kind in some way, I do think DOT is a little bit under a bunch of these other top teams. Now, if we're looking at something like Anomaly, Arbitration, Night Performance, this is another team that can always invalidate basically one debuff every single time. They are going to be able to deal with at least one of the Knights pretty efficiently. You're not going to have to worry too much. This team also can just invalidate certain MOC bosses. They can do very well on certain APOCs, like the Fei Xiao one. They are a very strong team, and they have a clearly defined niche that they are always going to dominate, while being able to still succeed in other places. That's why I think the team is so beneficial to actually get into, to get the pieces for, and then invest in it as you can. But if I'm comparing them to all of the other characters that are sitting besides Hecelins right now, I do think the performance is not quite as there, and I do think she should probably drop down to 0.5, or at the very least low T0. So now that we are done with talking about Hecelins, we have finished all of the T0 main DPS characters. I'm going to quickly go down to T0.5, since these are still considered top tier characters, and we're going to talk about the boys, Anexa, Mighty, Finon. I'm just going to get this one out of the way real quick. Mighty is still not that great. He is good. If you are running him with Cyrene, with Tribby, you don't even need to run a sustain at this point. He is a great character for sustainless, since he constantly regenerates his HP. So you just run him with another support on top of that, like an RMC, like a Ceridra, just somebody else who's going to provide a very substantial power boost to him. He is still very successful. If you have not invested in him at all, if you have not really invested in his team at all, you don't have like an E1 Tribby, you don't have an E2 Cyrene, you don't have even an E1 Mighty. If you do not have any of those things, I definitely think he is getting outperformed at least a little bit. Do I think that means that he should jump down all the way to T1? I think Aglaya, I think Saber, I think definitely Fei Xiao, and I think Herta are all pretty definitively worse than Mighty right now. Boot Hill, Break is weird. You don't actually see non-invested Break teams anymore, basically, so it's always hard to say about the actual investment level comparison there, but either way, I do think Mighty is better than most of the other things surrounding him, so I don't think he should drop down. I do just think he's definitely the weakest member of 0.5 right now. Now, we have the two more interesting of the two characters down here, Anexa and Finon. Let's start with Finon, because I'm going to be honest, the Anexa section is going to be pretty short. Finon is an interesting character. He kinda could make use of anything. I like that about Finon a lot, and he has continuously been a fairly powerful character even without his absolute best teams. It has gotten to a point where if you do not have those best teams, you are definitely gonna lag behind at least a little bit. Finon is kinda struggling at least a little bit without those ideal teammates. You really do want a Saridra at this point. You really want to be able to use Sparkle with him because of the new Sparkle buffs. And then Cyrene is once again just an amazing character overall for every Chrysosaur. And that does include Finon. In terms of just a base level team, and especially if you do not have Saridra at this point, yeah, he is definitely not in the top tier slot anymore. Pretty easily, I would say. I do still think he is noticeably better than every character below him, but in terms of actually getting all the way up to T0, yeah, that's probably unachievable for him without another random support getting heavily buffed and it benefiting him specifically a lot. In terms of if you should continue to try and get him in the future, at this point, I'm not really sure that's a wise choice. There is not really a lot of avenues to make him super good upon when you first get him anymore. And I do just think other characters are already better at base, and they are going to be better with continuous investment. Yeah, probably not the best choice to still continuously be recommending or going for. He can still be incredibly powerful, so if you have him, I would keep investing in him, but that's kind of where my opinion lies with him. Last but not least, we have Anexa. I am going to be honest, I think Anexa could be in T0.5. However, I do also think he could be in T0. Anexa is simply a very powerful character who, if you have just Cyrene and just Saridra with him, he was still able to one-cycle Sparksicon. Now imagine if you had more than 3 cost on that goddamn team. Just imagine it for one beautiful moment. Imagine what he could do in every other game mode and against every other boss. Anexa is still a very powerful character that is essentially limited only by the power level of your supports and by how well you can actually play him and manage his rotations as well as the rotations of your supports. He's a character that can have a very high skill expression, which is super nice. I think he is deserving of getting boosted up to T0. However, a lot of the other characters up there have more dedicated supports, simply have better Eidolons to actually improve their base power levels, or have better support Eidolons to improve their base power levels. And he has not really gotten anything else dedicated to him since, obviously, Cyrene and Saridra. With all that combined, I think it's fair to say that he's in T0.5. You know, he's still a top tier, he's still really strong, he's still really great. He's very much hit or miss either way. You can say that he is T0, but you can also say that he's T0.5 since he does suffer a little bit compared to many of the other top tiers. Now, in terms of how long I think he is going to stay in this spot, yeah, he's still going to be in this spot for quite a while, I think. He's just a great character overall, not too hard to build, not too hard to get that maximum value out of. Anexa is just, once again, an absolute marvel of game design. I say it so often, but it always rings true all the same. And that wraps us up for today. So that was talking about all the top tiers. I believe I did miss on if you should continuously keep getting some of them into the future, and I apologize for that. This was a bit of a messy video, and it was a lot of yapping. Star Rail is in a very decent place right now, even with all the talks of power creep and, you know, all that miserable stuff. I think we could definitely be far worse off. Just try and ignore the anomaly arbitration nights. Anyway, I've got plenty more good videos coming out soon, so I will see you guys then. Bye-bye!